So when I first heard about the FreeMesh system for $150, I had to check it out. That's such a good deal for a wireless router and 2 wireless mesh nodes. I mean, I paid $90 just for a wireless access point from Ubiquiti using the Unify system. So to get a whole house set up for $150, I had to check it out.
Okay, so I am currently connected from my laptop into a gigabit switch that is connected to my pfSense router. So we will see that I'm connected at a gigabit, and we will run an iPerf to the pfSense and around 950 megabits. That's basically a gigabit, what you can expect through a gigabit router. So what we're going to do now is we're going to disconnect my laptop from my local network, and I'm going to plug that network connection into the OpenMesh router on the WAN interface, and then I'm going to plug my laptop into the OpenMesh router, and we're connected at a gigabit. So the OpenMesh hardware, or at least the router hardware, has gigabit interfaces on it. So now let's do an iPerf, and this is from my laptop into the FreeMesh router, plugged into a gigabit switch to a pfSense firewall running iPerf. So as we can see, we got it as low as about 200 megabits and as high as almost 500 megabits. So the hardware in that router is definitely not capable of going over 500 megabits from the looks of it. So if you've got a gigabit internet connection or even a 500 meg internet connection, I don't know that I would trust this as your router to the internet. So I don't know if it's, like this hardware. Most likely this hardware isn't capable of that kind of throughput. At the same time, the OpenWRT documentation doesn't really help in this FreeMesh environment, and that's because one example is I went to look up, how do I add SSIDs to the wireless network? And if you look at the OpenWRT documentation, they're like, go to wireless, click add. Well, the add button's not there. And I don't know if that's because, again, this hardware is so stripped down that it's not capable of holding a full OpenWRT firmware that has those features, or if the FreeMesh guys like stripped it down, which I can't imagine they would do that. As you can see right here, it's running a FreeMesh version of the firmware, so it is something kind of special to them. But this interface is definitely not consumer friendly. The nice thing is, out of the box, once you configure your stuff, you take one of these wireless access points and you plug it into from the WAN interface to the LAN interface on the router, and it will automatically provision it, which is pretty nice. And so once it finishes provisioning, you just unplug that wireless access point, take it to another section of your house, plug it back in, and when it completes the startup process, it will hop on that mesh network and automatically start broadcasting your 2.4 or 5 gigahertz SSID. And so in this example, it's got 2 radios, radio 0, which is 2.4, and your radio 1, that's 5 gigahertz. And you can clearly see it's capable of multiple SSIDs. Just the interface doesn't give you that feature. And when I contacted FreeMesh to ask about that, their response was, well, it's open source, so maybe it'll happen in the future. The fact that it's not there now and OpenWRT already supports that leads me to believe that this hardware probably isn't capable of handling a firmware that can do multiple SSIDs. So the chances of it coming in the future to the FreeMesh system is probably slim or none. So that's kind of disappointing. And now I've worked with Sonic Walls, FortiGates, pfSense. They're not the friendliest interfaces, but those are all basically like commercial grade firewalls from my perspective. And this is being sold as a consumer product. Blanket your house, everything will be great. This interface sucks. Perfect example is DHCP, right? So this says DHCP and DNS, but if you want to have your DHCP hand out specific DNS, so I run a Pi-hole and a cache server, so I don't want to just give out the random internet or Comcast DNS. I want to do a custom one. Well, it's nowhere on this page. You actually have to go to the interfaces page and edit it here. And so you see it says use custom DNS servers. Has nothing to do with DHCP again. This is for this interface. So I could have this interface use Pi-hole, but it's the router. So why do I really care? To do that, you actually have to come over to DHCP server. Now this is standard, right? Start at .100 and hand out 150. So it's going to do .100 through .250. That's reasonable. But there's no custom DNS to be handed out. You have to go to your DHCP options and add it, and at least they give you an example right here. If you work in an IT industry and you're used to doing DHCP options to hand out a PBX IP, provision, voice over IP phones, Pixie boot, that kind of stuff, that's fine. But a consumer, they're expecting a DNS1, DNS2 here, maybe a checkbox to enable or disable custom DNS, not DHCP options where you have to give the option number and then the IPs. I mean, it's silly. All right, so let's take a look, and there it is. So,
wait a second, channel 10? You should only be using 1, 6, and 11. That goes to show these guys don't even understand wireless.
One of our associated stations is connected. It's on the mesh network. This is the device. It's rebroadcasting. Another thing that's nice about this system is I'm actually going to disconnect the hardwire from the FreeMesh router, and I'm going to plug directly into the LAN interface of the FreeMesh mesh access point. And so it's automatically in a bridged mode. So I can hardwire things into one of the access points, and it'll broadcast it across that mesh network. And so if we do that, let's go ahead and do another iPerf. And so in this case, it's going from a hard physical wire from my laptop into a mesh access point, and then from the mesh access point to the FreeMesh router, and then from the router to gigabit switch to the iPerf, PFSense. Now, I got 100 megabit. That's okay, nothing great, but what you'll see is I'm connected at 100 megabit. And the reason is the mesh access points they provide, the physical hardware is only capable of doing 100 megabit. It's got 100 megabit interfaces. And so in this review, I'm actually using the $150 set that's provided in that kit. So I don't have the LTE. If we scroll back up here and look at the hardware, so the FreeMesh router has all gigabit interfaces. And if we go back to the node, we'll see that it has 100 meg interfaces. So it's not going to perform any better than that if you're hardwired in. Now I'm going to disconnect from the hardwire. I'm actually going to unplug the FreeMesh access point so I don't accidentally connect to it. And I'm going to directly connect to the FreeMesh router using the 5 gigahertz. All right, so now we're connected. This test will be from my computer wirelessly to the FreeMesh router through the gigabit switch to the PFSense firewall. If we do that test, not bad. So the 5 gigahertz AC is capable of around 450 megabits. So the fact that we're hitting almost 300 megabits through that interface is really good. But again, if you've got 4 or 5 devices that are all trying to talk at these 300 megabit wireless speeds, and you have a 500 megabit physical uplink, everybody's going to be disappointed because nobody's going to get that. The physical hardware is not capable of getting you a gigabit to the internet, even if you have a gigabit internet. So there's that. Now, to make things worse, we're going to go back down here and We're going to talk about this $150 price tag. Okay, so like I said before, this is this is where I got excited. I'm like, wow, you get a wireless router, 2 wireless access points, $150. Yeah, there's a problem with that, and luckily the FreeMesh guys aren't so shady that they're scraping off the stickers on the hardware and scratching off the serial numbers and model numbers and stuff like that. So I googled the physical hardware, and if you come back up and look at the router that it comes with, this little guy right here is this little guy right here. So you're looking at a $40 piece of hardware out of China. If we come back over and we look at the FreeMesh node, that little guy right there, that's this guy right here for 20 bucks. So you're looking at $80 worth of hardware that comes with OpenWRT pre-installed. So I'm not sure if the FreeMesh guys are actually giving you anything extra. And in these examples, they're saying, these are LTE. I accidentally closed that one out, but it was also LTE. So I'm not sure if it's, if you dive in and do the comparison, it may actually be this model over here, right, that they're charging 250 bucks for. And I don't know that there's any value add. Maybe the FreeMesh guys did the actual work to make it so you plug an access point into the router and it magically provision it, or maybe OpenWRT comes with that by default, and they're literally just purchasing the crappiest hardware, the cheapest hardware they can get, and that's capable of running OpenWRT, and then putting their stuff on it and selling it as a package. Now, granted, it can't be used, well, in my instance, it can't be used as the internet router because it's too slow. I've got gigabit internet. I can't have this piece of crap slow my internet down. But the wireless infrastructure isn't that bad. Getting 300 megabits from my laptop on AC is pretty good. So it would be nice to be able to use this hardware. I just have to find out if I can get the router into a mode where it's just another access point, generating the home connection for the rest of the mesh access point. So let's see if we can figure something out.
So after a few hours of factory resetting and config changes, I was able to get it set up as a wireless access point, but it's way too much work. I wouldn't recommend this system to anyone.